Okay, guys, so we are going to cover modeling the head from your template mesh. Since this is the remaining video that's missing from my menagerie for this class, we're going to go ahead and do that. So what I have here is our template mesh that we started with, and I want to show you guys how to kind of sculpt it and get it to look a little bit more like something other than a JSON mask, which is what it kind of starts out looking like. Okay? So if you'll notice, these edge flows are designed in a way where they kind of start out and kind of roll around certain feature areas on the face. So we have the first one here. This one is often referred to as the Robbins Mask because it looks like the character Robin from Batman and Robin, little mask there. It's also referred to sometimes as the Raccoon Mask. And then we have another set of lines here which starts here at the nose and goes around the side of the face, and this is kind of where the smile lines will emanate from on your finished head model. Now, smile lines are a little different if you just observe people in nature. You'll notice probably that some people have smile lines that start kind of down here at the corner of the nose, and some people will have them that kind of start up here at the top of the nose, and then some people will have them kind of in the middle. And so what we've done here is we've left these edges in here where they are so that you have the flexibility of deciding where you actually want to put your smile lines, and the edges are going to flow around the face in the way that the face is actually shaped. Okay, so and then I have another set of feature lines here. I've got my mouth, so this is the external part of the mouth. That's kind of like the lip line, so that's the outside of the lips. Basically, this line here represents where the color, so the pinkness of your lip, and then the skin. So this edge right there. That's your kind of, think of that as your lip color line. Okay? And then we have the corner of the mouth there. And then we have a nostril. And all the nostril lines also emanate inward and up. And this is going to help us get the nostril shape. Inside the eye, the other one we have is right here, the interior of the eye. And we have two sets of, inside the Robbins Mask, we have another set of edges here. And this is kind of the line that you're going to use to get things like the bags of the eye, so the bag under the eye, which is typically right about there. And then also the lid. So we kind of, the older you get, this skin above your eyelid keeps growing. And so, you know, the older the character, the more that lid will have skin that kind of folds over the eye. And so we have an edge there to capture that shape. All right. So that's kind of the layout here. This is like the highway for where the shapes are going to go. And then what I always like to do is just discuss a little bit about proportions of the head, because you guys are kind of new to modeling, and let's see here. I think it's worth discussing so you don't end up distorting your mesh beyond all noticeable human proportion. So I just grabbed a couple images from the internet. I know these are very basic, but I kind of like it for that because they're so basic. Ah, crap. Pause. Hold on. So I kind of like this one. I pulled it off of Wikipedia, and it is so basic that it's almost laughably technically basic. But in general, this is kind of how the proportions of the head boil down. So your head is broken into, you can break your entire face and skull into thirds. And so the way it goes is the bottom third is where the mouth is. And then in that third, the lower third, the mouth is up on, you could break it into thirds again, and the mouth is kind of in the middle of the upper third. That's where the lip break is. Then in the middle third here, this box, we have kind of the eyes and the nose. And if you'll notice, the eyes are almost in the middle of that second third box. And then we finally have the top third, which is basically where your brain is stored. That's the skull. The widest part of your head typically is the skull here at the top, or sometimes, depending on people's cheekbones, your cheekbones. So some people's cheekbones will protrude out past the dimension of the skull there. Some people's will be inside. That's just depending on what type of character you're modeling. This one, they have it depicted inside. And then the eyes, it's worth noting on the eyes that the eyes are basically as far apart as one single eye. So if you're trying to decide how far to space the eyes, just look at one of the eyes and say, okay, that distance, that's how wide apart they need to be. All right? And then finally, the nose kind of starts at the middle of that middle third, and then it can come down. It comes down into that lower third just a little bit, just above the lip. Okay? And then from the side, we have this guy, and basically the head, if you just bisected it, so right down the middle, the ear would go on the back side half. And then on the middle half, that's kind of where the eye is. The important thing from the side is to know is that the skull should be about equally as deep front to back. And then the ear is going to go right at about that midline. And then for the placement of the ear and how big the ear is typically going to be somewhere around the corner of the eye, sometimes bigger. Everyone's a little different though. So somewhere around the corner of the eye to all the way up to here to the brow, and then down to somewhere either just right at the bridge or the base of the nose to even slightly past it. So ears, I believe, I don't know if this is urban legend that I'm repeating, but I believe your ears continue to grow also. Yeah. Your nose and your ears continue to grow, and so that's why the older the person, sometimes that will throw those proportions off. And again, these are only guidelines because, as we know, biology, everyone is like vastly different, and so these are just guidelines so your character doesn't end up looking really strange. Okay, so these are good ones to try to follow, and after that we're going to jump right in here. So I'm going to close all these tabs.
So since I'm working with
okay, so now that we have our base mesh and I've told you guys where the lines are going and then approximate proportions, if we look at this, check it out, the ear is about midway down the middle. We got the thirds. The rule of thirds starts at the chin. That's the first third. There's the nose, middle third, then there's the head. Again, the widest part of your head is either going to be here or the cheekbone. Cheekbone is always the widest part of the face, but the widest part of the head, it will typically be this or this, depending on. All right, so what I like to do, I'm going to start with the eye. What I like to do is I just like to start adding one edge at a time. And so because you can control things and things don't get away from you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with the eyelid itself, and we're going to do that first. So the first thing I do is your eyelid hollow like that? Is it just a hole and it's like paper thin there? I heard a no. No. What is it like?
got thickness.
It's got thickness. Okay, so if I want to add thickness to something, I'm going to go into border mode. What do I need to do? I need to add edges so that I can depict that thickness. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into border mode. I'm going to select that hole, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to extrude it. And so as we know, the extrusion in Max sometimes, for edges anyhow, leaves a little bit to be desired. So what I do is I work in Maya a lot, and I like the way Maya extrudes edges. And so what I do is I trick Max into extruding like Maya by turning both these values to 0 and 0 and then hitting extrude. So I know that it extruded because I know that that's what the software did. And then what I do is I just pull it backward. And that basically makes Max behave like Maya does for edge extrusion. Okay, so now that I've done that, I've got a little bit of thickness there on my eye line and for my eye socket. The next thing I want to do immediately after I do that is I want to create an eyeball. So I'm going to pop over to my orthographic viewport and I'm going to go to create standard primitives and I'm going to do a sphere. And for size wise, I don't know that I have a science for this. I've heard people say that everyone's eyeballs are the same size. I really doubt that. That sounds improbable. All right, but maybe it's true because some things you hear and they end up being true. So what I like to do is I just like to make it about what I think eyeball size is for my character. The eyeball is kind of ridiculously bigger than the little section that goes through there. So, and then I usually like to leave, at least in this stage, this is kind of like a proxy eyeball. It's not my finished eyeball. So I like to leave the polar lines in there so I can kind of pretend like that's the pupil.
Will we be pulling out the pointy one?
You can if you want to, but I'm not going to show that in this demo. All right, so there's my eyeball, and then I just kind of usually go back and look at it, and that looks pretty reasonable. All right, so the thing is about your eye socket is it does get completely shaped around the eyeball. And the eyeball is, for the most part, spherical. It's not perfect because it's an organic form, but it's close enough. So we're going to go ahead and use a sphere to do that. All right, so the first thing I want to do now that I got my little eyeball in there, bless you, is, all right, only one bless you per customer. All right, so then we're going to go in here, and what I want to do is I want to mold the eyelid and eye socket around my eyeball. And so you can see how I got some gaps in here, right? That's no good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my base mesh, and I'm going to grab the vertices here, and I'm going to just kind of pull those in until they intersect my eyeball. And now because these vertices kind of just get buried into the eyeball, this is sometimes referred to as an eye bag or a mouth bag. You do it the same way. And what a bag basically is just saying is that you're creating some kind of null geometry behind whatever it is. And because it never really gets seen, it can just be a floater. And so some people like to, oh, you're kidding me. I thought that was almost hung. Some people like to just, at least on the eye, just keep this kind of open like I'm about to do. But on the mouth, what you'll typically do, and I'm not going to cover this today, but on the mouth what you'll do is you'll extrude those edges back, and then you'll create a little bubble in here that kind of goes all the way around, and that's called a mouth bag. Okay, and you can do that with the eyeball too, but in my experience, just having some edges that go back into the eyeball itself are sufficient unless the shot calls for that person's eye to get gouged out. Then you would need something behind there, but we don't need that. So, what's that? Yeah, we're going to get to that. Tear ducts come after I subdivide further. Okay, so now I'm going to keep going here, and I've got this section here where my corner of my eye is kind of not meshing with my eyeball, so I'm going to kind of pull that inward, and I might even grab these guys and just kind of pull those in a little bit. There we go. Okay, and that's generally my eye socket shape, and now I got no more gaps, so I'm golden. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to start adding a little bit of shape to my eyelid to make it more realistic. And the way I'm going to do that is by coming in here and adding extra edge loops. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this loop right here. And actually, I'm sorry, I wanted to go to ring. So I'm going to ring this around. And then I want to add an extra loop in there so that I can start getting a little bit more shape from my eyelid. So I'm going to go ahead and I've rung that, and now I'm going to connect it. And if I wanted to, now I could go ahead and slide this down a little bit closer. And by sliding that closer, I'm basically just going to get a little bit more of a hard line there. And so I'm hoping that if I NURMS this out, that I'm going to start to get something that's looking a little bit more like the break that I would get on the actual eyelid. And so it's starting to get a little bit harder, and that's not bad. And so I'm going to go ahead and leave that one alone for now. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead. Now the next line that I want to do is right here, and I'm going to come in here. If I wanted to, I could also exaggerate that underlid a little bit, make that a little bit more pronounced, like so. And then let's say that my character has been up all night working on finals and for like a week straight, and he's a little tired. Then I would want to go ahead and come in here to edge mode again, and I'm going to ring around again. And now I'm going to add an edge in here so I can get that kind of under bag that a lot of people have when they're tired, like kind of the sunken eye look. So I'm going to come in here and ring that out, and then I'm going to connect that. Whoops. I wanted to connect with my settings so that I can slide it. This one I'm going to bring out a little bit farther. And then now I'm going to come in here and let's go in here and I'm going to add that kind of under bag look to the eye. Alright. And then now I can use you always, whenever you add an extra edge loop, you want to use it to get a little bit more shape or detail. And make sure that you're not just adding the edges and then ending up with kind of like a bad artifact after the fact. All right. And so you can also see here that this extra edge is going to allow me, and these are a little bit too far protruded for my taste, so I'm going to bring those in. Okay. All right, and now I have this extra edge here, which is also going to allow me to kind of get that fold that occurs in older people when their skin kind of grows down over their eye, like so. And it's usually kind of on the corners of the face. And then this right here, this edge is going to be used kind of for my cheekbone. And so I'm going to protrude that out a little bit as well there. And then now from time to time, so notice I'm adding an edge, I'm shaping that edge, and then I'm going to preview it using my Sub-D preview. So I'm going to come over here and NURMS it out, all right? And I just look at it. How am I doing? Well, this is starting to look a little bit more like an eyelid. Okay, I'm starting to get a little bit more of my brow that's growing out over the lid itself. I could actually grab this edge now. Oops. That vertex is kind of hidden, and that's my actual eyelid itself, and I could pull that one back in a little bit. And now I'm starting to get a little bit more shape, as if that eyelid is kind of folding up and into the underbrow a little bit more. All right, and I'm going to keep going here. All right, so I got a good start there on the eye, and it's starting to look a little bit more natural. So now I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my NURMS. And now at this point, what I always like to do is address this edge here, which was left intentionally open. There's definitely a lot more shape there in the skull, but we didn't put it in because we knew we were going to do this. We kept it simple so we could build the base mesh really fast. And then knowing that we have a loop in here, oops, so if I come in here and loop that around, I knew that I was just going to be very easily able to come in here and add this extra edge right there. So I'm going to do that. At the base, I'm not really concerned. And then I'm going to come in here. And now what I want to do is I want to protrude my forehead a little bit. Okay. Like so. I might bring my lid out here a little bit farther out as well. I want to check under the chin to see if I wanted to now. I got a few more extra verts here. I could go ahead and make my chin a little bit more pronounced. And there's my jawline. Okay. All right, so it's coming along kind of overall. So far I've added some shape for the eye and the eyelid. I've added some detail here for the skull so that our skull isn't so sunken on top. And now I want to come down to kind of probably the most time-consuming and important part of the model, which is the nose. Okay, so the nose, notice I'm only adding one edge at a time. I'm not trying to go in and drill in and add a whole bunch of detail in one spot. I'm just kind of massaging it overall. Add an edge, get it to look okay. Okay, now I'm going to come into the nose. So let's discuss the nose a little bit. It's probably the most compound object on your face, and what I mean by that, it's got a bunch of compound angles. So I'm going to focus first on the nostril because that's where the most compound angles actually are. So this line right here, this edge, is basically the corner of my nostril. So it's the crease point between my face and where my nose starts. If I were to depict that edge using edges, that little curvature, if you just feel it with your finger, how many edges do I need to get just the beginning transition into my nose? Just the first part of that curve. How many? 3, right? Okay, now that's just the first part of the curve. Now that I hit my nose, that's the first. On the other side, how many do I need just to get that second transition into the nostril? it's another 3, but because those are shared, I can actually use 5. All right? So I know that I need 5 edges just to get that shape right there at the corner of the nostril. So that's what I want to focus on. All right? So I'm going to come in here, and my edges are designed to flow right around here. And this edge, it's really not designed. This is kind of this edge right here is intended to be the outside extent of the nose. And when I add edges, I want to add them to the interior here rather than add them to this flow. Okay? This flow is more designed for the face. This section, and maybe I should highlight it, this section from here to here, that is where all your nostril edges are going to go. And so it's going to get a little high traffic up in here at the corner of the eye, but that's actually going to help us because Bunny was asking, well, where does the tear duct go? The tear duct's going to go right in there. And so these extra 5 edges that I'm about to throw in here are actually going to help us get that shape for the tear duct. So it's kind of, we're getting 2 for the price of 1 here. All right, but as I said before, whenever we add an edge, how many do we want to add at a time before we start shaping? 1. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to wring that out. And I'm going to go ahead and connect it. So I'm going to add 1 edge. This is the beauty of Max on edges. I love this little slider because it allows you to slide it where you want it to go. And so I know that this right here is going to be kind of the corner of my nose. And so I'm going to slide it down to the corner there. This edge right here is basically where my nostril is going to begin. And so I'm going to grab these 2 dudes right here. And I know that these should be relatively flat because I'm trying to create a concave. I had to think that through for a second. A concavity right there. So, and then I'm going to just kind of leave these guys alone up here for now. I'm not really worried about them. I'm going to fix those up later. All right, so that is kind of the first shape there where my nostril is starting to take form. So now I'm going to come over and I need to add another edge. So I'm going to ring it. I'm going to connect it, and I'm going to slide it down. Okay. All right, on this one, I can start to add the shape of the corner of the nostril a little bit because we have the requisite 3 edges in order to be able to do that. And so now I'm going to kind of pull these guys out a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of that first corner there of the nostril. And now finally I can actually start getting some true dimension to this because I'm going to go ahead and add 1 more. So I'm going to ring this and then I'm going to connect it. Slide this one to be a little bit farther up there. I'm going to say okay. And then now on this guy, this is where my nostril actually starts to take shape. I'm really going to go ahead and start giving it some dimension here. And so this one's like a little bit more of an art form. And this is probably, to get this shape correct, in my opinion, is probably one of the more time-consuming spots while you're modeling your face. And all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to beef that up so that I get that nice flare there from my nostril on the side. I'm not totally worried about the shape of the nostril right now. I might do a little bit right here just to get my nostril shaping up a little bit. Okay, but nothing crazy. Alright. So that is kind of the beginning of the corner of the nose. And now I want to go ahead and preview that in my sub-D. And so, yeah, it's looking alright. I'm not winning any prizes, but I got a nice sharp crease there. And that's because I'm not done yet. So all I was concerned about at that moment was just getting that crease going and getting it to look right. Alright, so it doesn't quite look right yet, but that's because we got a ways to go. Alright, so I'm going to turn back on my edged faces. Now, shape-wise on the nose, why is my nose looking kind of weird? So I've added that fold there, or the crease in the base of the nostril, but what's missing? So we're going to look at it in this dimension here. We've only created a nostril crease in one dimension. And so we need to create one in the other dimension too, which is going to be here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I need to add another set of edges here. So I'm going to select this and ring it, and then I'm going to connect it. And this is the one that also does dual purpose because it's simultaneously going to add my shape for my nostril flare vertically, but it's also going to allow me to have a line to add a smile line if I want to. And so I'm just going to go ahead and be generic here and say my character's smile line is going to go right down the middle of his face. Okay. So I'm going to start that out. And then I'm going to come in here to the corner of the nostril. And I almost did them two at a time, but I decided not to. There we go. And now I'm starting to give the nostril shape vertically as well. And then I can come in here and I could grab these guys and pull those in and up a little bit if I wanted to. I don't want to do too much. Okay? And then I'm going to come in here and give this guy a little bit more shape there. And then for the tip of the nose, a little bit more shape there as well. Okay? Now the front side of the face, I know that at the middle section of the face that it should be pretty close to flat. So I'm going to flatten these out a little bit where they're kind of coming to a point. And now that I'm doing this, this would be a great time for me to go ahead and mirror my head as an instance so that we can see both sides of this thing simultaneously. So I'm going to instance it up, say OK, and then I'm going to just move this instance as close as I can get it. It's OK if it doesn't touch. And then now I can go ahead and NURMS it out and see how I'm doing. OK, cool. We can see here that we're starting to get a more realistic eyelid. We're starting to get some overhang for the eyebrow itself. And then even though this nostril looks awful right now, like he's melting, everything is kind of in the right place. And now it's my responsibility to make sure that I shape this correctly while everything's still very simple. All right, and then you can see here that we're starting to get the hint of a smile line there, which is also looking fairly natural. Okay, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the nose, though. And one of the issues that I have here with this nose is that I need to add a little bit more definition here in the corner of the nostril. And in order to do that, in order to get the shape that I need, what does it look like if you guys were to take a guess? What does it look like I need?
Another line.
Yeah, I need another line, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that. I'm going to come in here and ring it out. And then I'm going to connect it. And this is where it gets a little dangerous because very quickly, once you get the edges getting a little too close together, you can kind of lose the handle. And so that's why I strongly recommend that you guys take your time. So see, I'm starting to add that nostril flare there a little bit more. I can pull this one in a little bit. Okay. And then now I want to check it again. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, NURMS it out. And that's starting to look more reasonable, right? It's a little weird, still there. But from the side anyway, I got my nostril break. It's actually starting to look fairly natural. I got a little bit too much shape there on the top. So here's where you guys are kind of experts now because you can start modeling using your control cage. And I'm kind of lacking some edges now on the inside of the nose here. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of those and I'm going to ring that out and connect it. And that's going to give me some extra edges here to work with in order to So what I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to thicken up my nostril because these guys were starting to crowd a little bit too much. Okay, and then I'm going to come in here, tighten that up a little bit. Alright, so it's starting to look a little bit more natural. The other thing that you can do is, one of the downsides to that template mesh is that the nose, you kind of end up with a little bit of a pig nose, where the nose is kind of slanting upward. And so what I usually like to do is come in here, and the best tool for this, honestly, is this guy right here, which is the freeform tool. And I'm going to come into paint deform. I'm going to expand this out. And the shift tool. It's a magical little tool that I recommend you guys get used to. Oops, fall off.
That tool does not like to play nice.
Hold on. There we go. And so I just want to pull that down a little bit. If I wanted to give my character
A peak.
a little bit more of a pronounced bridge of the nose. Pull that down a little bit. Okay. And so there we go. We're starting to get a little bit better, but I've got some issues here. I got some crowding on these edges here, and then I also have some artifacts. I haven't really shaped that nostril out completely yet. I was really just trying to get the shape from the side. So this tool is also useful because it's going to allow me, where I have the crowding there in the corners, I can come in here to the relax/soften tool, and I can kind of relax those guys up there and keep that shape from happening the way it was. I could also come in here and just hit portions of the side of my nostrils too, if I wanted to fix those up. And so there, that's starting to look a little bit better. All right. And now what I want to do is I want to keep going. I think that my eye sockets have become a little bit too far apart as I'm doing this. And so I'm going to get out of the freeform tool and select my mesh. And I want to use the soft selection now. So I'm going to come in here and grab it. And I'm going to pull these guys in just a little bit. Because remember, your eye sockets should be about the same distance apart as one of the eyes. Both eye sockets as one of the eyes. So I'm going to kind of pull that back a little bit. Get that a little deeper. And I'm not all the way there, but I'm a little bit closer. I'm going to shape this up a little bit. And then now what I want to do is I want to use those extra edges that I just did for the nostril to kind of get a little bit better shape on my tear duct. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to turn off the soft select, and I'm going to start grabbing these guys. And I'm going to come in here and I can kind of grab, hopefully I'm grabbing two at a time. I may also at this point be grabbing the back of the head. I'll just throw that out as a disclaimer. Because when you're doing these lectures, you're always trying to do it as fast as possible. And so technically, I know that I could turn off my ignore back facing, but I really don't like that. And I don't want to go into why I don't, but I just don't. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit more of the tear duct going. And I can spread these out. If you ever want to spread edges out as well, and you don't want to rely on the soft select or the sculpt tool, you can also use this. This is a good one. It is the constraints. And so I have to get out of Subdivide first, I believe. Select my mesh. I want to turn off my Subd previews. And I'm going to go into vertex mode. And if you turn on your constraints to edge, it actually allows you to drag an edge along an existing edge. It's a little counterintuitive the way it works though in Max, where if you just grab any of these axes, it's going to attempt to drag along the edge that is closest to that axis that you're dragging. So it takes a little getting used to. So if I wanted it to drag along this edge, I would actually grab it in Y. Okay. If I wanted to drag in this edge, I would grab it in X and it'll slide. But it's very useful because it allows you to slide edges along an existing edge without kind of changing the shape. And you can get a little bit better parameterization there. So if I wanted to just kind of even these out, but without using the sculpt tool, this is a very, very good and easy way to do that. Okay, another cool one in here is to use the normal. And so what a normal constraint does is it will actually take the object or the vertex and it'll move it along the face normal. And so if you just want to say I have that underneath the eye there, that eye bag, I can constrain the movement to the face normal itself, which is basically just going to pull it perpendicular to the shape. So here's one in here. I want to say move these inward a little bit. The face normal. These, they get a little away from you at times though, because if you don't actually know where the normal is pointing. If they had written the software a little bit better, I think they probably would have given us like a temporary preview showing us which way that normal is flowing before. But you know what? Artists always want more from the tools, and the programmers like refuse to give it to us. Okay, so the normal constraint also works pretty well. Now what I want to do is I want to come down into, I've got my my smile line, I've got my eyelid sculpted out a little bit better. Now I want to come down into the lips because I haven't really paid any attention to them yet. And so I'm going to come in here and let's just say that I want to turn off my constraints, make sure that's off. I thought it was off. Nope. Okay, and I want to give my chin just a little bit more shape. Maybe I want to round that off a bit. Can come over here, give it a little bit more shape there. All right, just a little something. Nothing crazy. There we go. Okay, and now I want to pay attention to the lips a little bit. So what I like to do here first is I like to take care of kind of the sharp edge of the lip, but I want to do that one edge flow at a time. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab this ring right here and I'm going to ring it out, connect it. I'm going to bring this one a little bit closer to my lip line. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into these points and I'm going to protrude those a little bit. Kind of is like a placeholder telling me that that is the hard edge there of the beginning of my lip line. Now the bottom section of the lip typically is not very hard edged at all. So your bottom lip is typically a lot more rounded than the top lip. And so what I'm going to do there is I'm going to go into edge mode. And these I'm just going to kind of space out along the existing axis. And that's going to make my lip a little bit more bubbly and fat in that area. Whereas on top it's going to be a little bit harder of a line. Okay? And then I'm going to turn off my constraints here for a second. And I'm going to then beef the lip up, make it a little bit fatter. Okay. And then what I like to do here is I like to start tucking. The way it works is your lower mouth typically kind of folds under the upper lip on the right at the corners. And so I like to start folding that kind of early. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab these two right here and I'm going to kind of fold those under. And I'm going to grab these, whoops, accidentally grabbed more than two. And I'm going to kind of pull these guys down a little bit. And I might be overdoing it right here. And then now these guys right here, whoops. Okay. I think I've heard this referred to sometimes as a fish face or fish lip, where it kind of folds over itself. Okay, like that. And then now that I've done that, I'm going to NURMS it out, and I like to see how it's all coming. I turn off my edges, and he looks very unhappy. But everything's kind of there. We have the smile line. We got the lips. We can see at the top part of the lip it's starting to have that crease. We have the natural fold in the corner where the lower lip is starting to fold under the top lip. And then now I'm going to go back and I'm going to add a little bit more. So I'm going to come in here to edge mode. And now I want to start shaping the lip to give the, I don't know what that stupid thing's called right there. What is that? I always forget what it's called. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to add an edge right here. I'm going to ring it out. I'm going to connect it. And I accidentally did it without settings, which I never do. Connect. I want to slide it over a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to say okay. And what this guy is going to do, this little edge loop, is it's going to allow me to get that nice little shape at the top of the lip. That's it, Cupid's bow. Okay. So that's starting to look a little bit more natural. And I'm going to leave him kind of in his unhappy state. Okay, so I got my Cupid's bow. And then what I want to do is I want to grab these guys and pull these in. But in order to do that, I need another set of edges. So I'm going to come in here and ring this. And then I'm going to connect it one more time. I'm going to slide this one in even closer to the middle. Okay, and now I'm going to grab these edges here, or vertices. I'm trying to do this in vertex mode, but it's getting too hard to figure out where my control cage is, so I'm just going to turn that off for a second. And now I'm going to grab these center lines. Wherever your center lines meet, typically you want those to be fairly flat, and that's because the face at that point where it kind of comes together at the halves is going to be very flat. And so that's what I'm trying to do there. Okay, there we got that shape. I'm going to, oh crap. Come in here and grab these guys a little bit. Maybe protrude that out a little bit. This one here. I want to make sure that that's not crowding too much, so I'm going to grab this vertex right here. And I'm going to constrain it to an edge. And I'm going to push it up there to kind of space that out. All right. I'm not shaping the nostril at this point. I'm just kind of putting things where they need to go. All right. And I'm going to come back in here. Pull that inward. Pull this one inward. That's a little bit too much of a point for my taste. I'm going to pull that one out. Okay. And then I'm going to NURMS it. And you can start to see that we're starting to get that little shape there at the top of the lip. The lip's looking a little bit more natural. My nose I'm not entirely happy with at this stage in the game, but I don't want to spend the next half hour doing this. I'm trying to get this done in a reasonable period of time. Okay, so then finally, now that I got my lip kind of reasonably shaped, the next thing I would do is come in here and go in and add some more edges. So right now my lips are just, especially that top lip, it's just a little flat. I really don't like that. And so I want to plump that up as well. So I'm going to come in here and ring it. And then I'm going to connect it. This one I want to kind of dead center. And then now that's going to allow me to actually beef up the lip a little bit so that someone would actually maybe want to kiss this character. He could fall in love. Okay. And then with those extra edges, I could even start adding a little bit shape, a little bit of shape here. Block off my chin. Okay, that's kind of how it goes. Oops. For shaping the face. One final thing, I blocked up his chin a little bit there. Now you can start adding things like the jawline. If I were to carry that all the way back, that would be good. The next phase of this game is to go ahead and continue to do another shaping pass on the nose. One thing I do want to add that I do want to shape this nostril a little bit before we conclude here. And so I'm going to turn off the NURMS. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go into border mode, and I want to select that nostril cutout right there, and I'm just going to extrude that. Yep. So I'm going to say extrude. I want to do my 0 length extrusion because if I don't, watch what happens. It gets really stupid and silly. So I want to go to 0 and 0, and just remember, hey dude, you know, I just extruded that, so but max is not good, so I have to push it up myself. All right. And before I do that, I don't like that shape, so I'm going to come in here and use all 3 of these here simultaneously. Oh crap, that's after the extrude. There we go. So I'm going to grab all 3 of these simultaneously. Make my nostril a lot bigger and wider and more natural. Okay. And then now I'm going to extrude that up. So I'm grabbing that edge and I'm going to say extrude 0 length. Say OK. Push it up. Good. Push it back a little bit. And then I'm going to extrude that up again. Okay. In this case, I can start scaling it down a little. So I'm going to scale it uniform. And I can push it in a little bit. And then finally, I can just cap that hole. And because that's buried in there, we're not going to worry about the fact that those triangles might be kind of wildly illegal or incorrect. We're just going to leave them alone. We're going to let those little sleeping dogs lie. Okay. And then finally, I want to add some extra softness to the inside of the nostril, and I'm going to accomplish that by selecting this ring, which hopefully, if I did everything right, will ring around completely. Now I'm going to go ahead and connect that. I'm going to slide it in to the inside, very close to the interior of the nostril. Say OK. And then now I can get rid of some of this hard edge right here by selecting that one around and pulling that one up. And that's going to give me kind of a nice, more rounded edge on the inside of the nostril that's going to look a little bit more realistic than the existing hard edge that I had there before. Okay, and now finally, let's see how he did. There we go. Again, you know, I'm not going to sit here and model it perfectly while I'm explaining it to you. That's just not ever going to happen unless I were to rehearse this a couple more 100 times. But this is essentially how it goes for shaping. Once you've done this, the final pass is going to be, so it's, I hope you guys can see that it's not just keeping adding one more edge at a time. At this point though, once I got it modeled and I had the nose shaped a little bit better and I got my lips shaped a little bit better, I think they need to be a little bit fuller here and here. But once I got that done, the next stage is going to be come in here and subdivide the mesh. So at this point, let's say I was done with all the shaping and I had everything perfect, I would come in here and turbo smooth this guy out. Oops. And now I would be ready for part 2 of my shaping. Whoops. Which would be to start adding all the very fine detail, like the actual shape of the tear duct, and if I wanted that eye fold to come over more, and so on and so forth. If you wanted to accentuate that eye bag, you could do that now that you had the additional edges. And so you're just going to keep drilling down from, again, low to high. So that pass that I just showed you was kind of like my rough low pass. And then now I would turbo smooth this. Once I have a turbo smooth, that's your high pass. Then you're going to do all your high detail. Actually, this is your medium pass. Medium detail, and then the next one would be your high detail. Okay? Cool. Any questions?
The face that I have on my line is connected. It's already.
All right, guys, thanks. Good luck with your heads. Hit me up with any questions on the Facebook group, and we will see you next week.